Hello, D-Rock here. Welcome to the channel. So I asked Jen, I said, hey, would you let me take your Himalayan out for a ride? She was like, oh yeah. But you gotta clean the chain and lube it. I was like, well, all right, that's cool. So I wanted to give the Himalayan ride because we've been getting a lot of questions about, is the Royal Enfield Himalayan comfortable? And by comfortable, is it comfortable to ride? So, according to Jen, she loves the bike, very comfortable. Jen stands about 5'7", and I stand about 5'10", and I've only really ridden this motorcycle once through the desert. I did a video on it called Floating Through the Desert, and I found it to be pretty comfortable. However, half the ride I was standing up. So another question we get is the Himalayan comfortable on the highway? So that's what I'm going to do today. We're going to take the Himalayan out after I clean and lube the chain here. We're going to go for a nice long ride on the highway, maybe some interstate, and see how comfortable it is. So join me, and if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Helps us out tremendously. Let's ride. All right, we are on the roll. So I will say right off the bat, Royal Enfield Himalayan, what they got right is the seat. The seat on this motorcycle is undoubtedly the most comfortable seat I've sat on thus far. Now, let me just say a couple things here as far as my experience with other motorcycles, and for that matter, what I currently ride. I ride a 2022 KLR 650. I also ride a 2021 Honda CRF 300L. I do also have a, 2020 Yamaha XT250. So that's the experience what I'm considering as far as comfortable in comparison to the Himalayan, the Royal Enfield Himalayan. So you need to take that into account. I mean, everybody's going to have different experiences. Someone could be driving an Afro Twin and going down to a Himalayan. I mean, the variables are endless. So, you know, you got to take what it is when people talk about their experiences with motorcycles, because they're all different, really. Now that I've told you all the bikes I currently ride, that's what I'm pulling my experience from. So when I get on the Royal Enfield Himalayan, those previous bikes are what I currently ride and what I consider comfortable. A degree of comfort, that is. Let me just tell you, the XT250, that is not a comfortable bike. It's not. The seat's horrible, but it has its purpose, and it is an awesome bike overall. Now, as soon as I get on the Royal Enfield Himalayan, it feels pretty weird to me. I feel like I'm sitting down, like at an angle, and I don't know, it just feels weird. Maybe, probably just because it's not a very tall bike, and I'm used to riding the Honda CRF 300 and the KLR 650, both of which are taller bikes. So that has something to do with that. But after a few minutes of riding, you get used to the Himalayan. I do feel like I'm a bit of an angle, a downward angle, like my knees are kind of pointed into the asphalt there. It's kind of strange, but like I said, after a little while of riding, I just kind of forget about it. So that's the first thing that jumps out at me when I get on the Himalayan. That and the comfort of the seat. One thing about the seat, though, is it's not like now to use examples like the Honda and the KLR, it's just one long flat seat. The seat on the Himalayan is kind of curved up, so I can't push back and get farther. I'm kind of stuck where I am. I can still move around a little bit in it, but I am stuck. But you know, overall, it's not that big of a deal because the seat is extremely comfortable. So I'm going to ride a little bit on these types of roads and back roads before I decide to get on the interstate and highways, faster speeds, just so I can reacquaint myself with the bike. Like I said, I've only really given it one long ride before, and prior to that I just had a short ride on when we had just gotten it back from Vegas and had done the first ride. So that's all my experience on the bike, and I am actually considering getting one of these bikes in the very near future. Based on my previous ride, I really enjoyed it. So today's going to be a good ride too, because I really haven't spent that much time just on the asphalt riding it, and you know how it goes. One thing that I will say about the bike is I can easily get my feet on the ground, and like I mentioned, I stand 5 foot 10 inches, and let me just say, I can easily stand on this bike at a stop, so that's a big deal for some people. Oh, let's get some gas real quick. That's the least I can do for being able to take it out for a ride. We'll fill her up here. So this is what I meant by how the seat is sloped. It's where you couldn't push back, but it's not that big of a deal. Boy, they got that seat right as far as comfort. You're gassed up, ready to roll. One thing that, as far as comfort wise, that I'm wondering for long rides on the asphalt, that is, where you're not really standing up quite as much, is just my knees, because it's not a taller bike and I do feel a little squunched up, and I'm just curious if if I were to ride this for 10 hours straight on the asphalt. I think on any motorcycle you're going to be a little sore with that, but some are better than others for sure. And I'm just kind of curious about, I'm not riding it for 10 hours today of course, but to see how my knees are after a good long stretch on the highway, because that's a big deal. So I'm going to kind of ride some city roads here for a bit and then probably get on the interstate. Well, I feel comfortable enough to take it on the interstate. Oh, let's go give that a shot. Everybody's going in the same direction. Can't be that bad, right? And if you don't know, the Himalayan is not a fast bike. So, just like my KLR, she is just not a fast bike, but that's all right. And here we go. Woo-wee! Get this dude's blind spot right here. I'm kind of after the morning rush, so traffic's not too bad. We're gonna ride the interstate for a bit. Now the Himalayan's only got 5 gears, so you're not going to be cruising in 6th in this. But she gets right on up to 70, no problem. I'm pretty much on gradual terrain right here. I'm not going up big hills or anything, but she does her just fine. The stock windscreen on this bike works just fine for Jen, and it works just fine for me too. I'm not catching anything on the top of my helmet. So 70 miles an hour, she does just fine on the interstate. I'll probably lose a little bit if I got to go up a hill, but I don't really care. So I can maintain this speed no problem. And the bike weighs about 430 pounds. So if you do get into some wind, you're not going to get tossed around as bad as, like, for example, me being on my Honda CRF 300L, which I get blown around like a potato chip. So the weight helps this bike a little bit, lower center of gravity. Yeah, comfortable on the interstate. What am I at, 75 now? She's cruising along just fine. Man, I'm absolutely impressed. I have no problem sticking at 70, 75 miles an hour. I got a really big hill coming up, so I'm sure she's gonna struggle a little bit to climb that. But what I'm very impressed with is I've intentionally kind of stayed behind some semis. And for example, when I get behind semis on my 300L or the KLR 650, the wind turbulence make my bikes just dance around, but it's hardly noticeable on the Himalayan. I shit you not. I think because, number one, the weight of the bike, the lower center of gravity, and it's just not making the bike dance around like it does on the KLR or the Honda for me. It's just my observation, and I'm absolutely thrilled with it. So I think the Himalayan will be very comfortable to ride on the interstate for long periods of time. I mean, granted, you're gonna get sore, but I think this bike is just doing fantastic right now, mainly because of the lack of movement on the bike from the wind turbulence. I think it's just fantastic. So I'm on a big hill right now. This is a hill that all the semis struggle with, and she's cruising right up it at 70. No problemo, man. I'm actually catching up with the semis now. She's in 5th gear. She's scooting right up this big hill. I don't know what grade it is, but the Himalayan had no problem getting up this. Wow, I'm impressed. I am impressed. And like I said, on my other bikes, I get this close to the semis and I just get tossed around. Even the KLR gets a little shaky because it's such a top-heavy bike, but the Himalayan is just slicing right past these guys with no problem. I am really impressed. That's excellent. And like this position now where I'm at with that bigger truck in front of me, usually, for example, again, on the Honda or the KLR, I'll get some pretty good dancing around on the front end of the bike here, but the Himalayan, barely noticeable. I'm really impressed. And I'm almost to 80 miles an hour, so, and I'm still going up, and the bike's just absolutely smooth running. It's fantastic. There's some vibration in my hands at this speed, 75 miles an hour, but nothing overwhelming. I believe I can maintain this for quite some time. That's coming from a KLR rider who everyone should know by now. If you're into a KLR, man, the vibration, that's what that bike's known for. So it's definitely less so in the Himalayan. And I'm in a pretty decent breeze too, you know, besides the wind turbulence from the traffic. And once again, due to the lower center of gravity of this bike, she's pretty much sticking to the ground and not dancing around too much. Very impressed. All right, that was a good ride on the interstate. Very stable, very comfortable. About the only annoyance I've had is just with the vibration in the handlebars. And that's, you know, nothing too big a deal. So I'm gonna get off on just some highway roads now, going back into the city, then, you know, maybe up to 65 miles an hour or so. But that was a great ride on the interstate. Very stable, very smooth. Man, wow, I'm really impressed. So I'll get back up to speeds of, well, maybe 60 miles an hour on this stretch. Well, if I thought the interstate ride was smooth, this last ride through the country like that, real smooth. And that was between 50, 60 miles an hour for the stretch. Very nice. Man, at speeds like this, you know, 30, 35 miles an hour, its bike is just smooth as can be. And you can get a little break because you can just, I can get both feet on the ground and stretch a little bit when I stop. Can't really do that on the KLR. We're gonna get on this highway here, the Parkway, Southern Parkway, and get back up to speed and ride that for a bit. So this will take us all the way on the other side of St. George from a little town of Hurricane here. So we'll get a nice ride in on this one. Okay, looks like we got about 20 miles or so, maybe a little bit longer on this stretch, and we're doing 65 miles an hour. We're just going to be cruising, baby. So enjoy the ride here. Smooth sailing, man. It's been cruising at 65, 70. All is well. Going on the outskirts of St. George now. I'm going to head back and get back on the interstate. And that'll bring me back into the city. All right, time to get back on the interstate. That ride was simply awesome. Great stretch of road. Just cruising, man. The Hemi performed fantastic. Okay, we're gonna take the interstate back into the St. George area. how many miles have I gone at this point? I've gone 80 miles. So by the time this is all said and done, this will be a good 100 mile loop. A little bit of interstate, highway, city roads. It's a good mix up to get an idea of how comfortable the bike will be. And I'm quite comfortable. Really, the only thing at this point that I wish I could have done, especially on that long stretch, is kind of shift around on the seat a little bit, like move back or so. But I couldn't because the seat's like sloped and cut out. But really that's not that big of a deal because ultimately the seat is extremely comfortable. Fantastic ride, man. Fantastic ride. That's it for the interstate. So she had no problem keeping up 70, even 75 miles an hour. No problem at all. I did have some pretty nice hills to go up, but I didn't really notice a loss of power on those. Yeah, I mean, I think the Himalayan's perfectly fine for interstate riding. You might lose a little power on some steep climbs, but other than that, yeah, she handled just fine. What I was most impressed about was the stability. Being around all the semis just didn't barely phase the bike. Not much movement or dancing around. Very stable. So quite comfortable. And on the highway, 65 miles an hour straight shots. Yeah, you can't lose on this bike. Very comfortable indeed. City riding like this, man, excellent, excellent. I'm gonna take this for a ride in Vegas or something. Just smooth, as Jen would say. It just floats, man. Being able to stand up, man, fully, that's nice. Stretch out a little bit. That's really all I needed. My knees feel fine. My butt's a little numb, I'm not gonna lie. But I mean, come on, man. It's gonna be a 100-mile ride. I don't think it matters what you're on. Your butt's gonna go a little numb. Well, all right. Here I am, kind of back at my starting point. I still got a ways to go, but ultimately, yeah, the Royal Enfield Himalayan is extremely comfortable on the highway and interstate. I would have no problem riding this for a 10-hour stretch. I mean, granted, it's not 10 hours straight, but get off here and there and walk around a bit, but no problem whatsoever. I think the bike would be fantastic. As a matter of fact, I'm probably going to end up getting one of these bikes in the very near future. So, there you have it. I still have to mirror what Jen says, and the bike floats, the bike's comfortable, it's smooth. Yeah. The only thing that kind of, not really, just an observation, is the way the seat's kind of dug out, and you kind of can't scoot back. You kind of, for lack of a better way of describing it, stuck in a position, but that's not bad. The seat is extremely comfortable. The most comfortable seat I've been on a motorcycle thus far. So I really don't see any cons at this point. It vibrates like a motorcycle does at high speeds. I mean, my KLR is worse. But overall, yeah, very comfortable. Very comfortable to ride, very comfortable to stand. I think it's an excellent bike. So hopefully this kind of answers some questions. If you're curious if the Royal Enfield Himalayan is a comfortable bike on the highway interstate, it is. And like I said at the beginning, I stand 5 feet 10 inches tall. Yeah, by the time I get home, it'll be 100 miles. My knees are perfectly fine. Just those couple times where I stood up at the stoplights, that's all I needed, just to kind of refresh myself. And my knees are not bugging. They're pretty much fine. My butt got a little numb on that long stretch of highway, but I mean, come on, man. Other than that, no worries, man. No worries. Folks, thank you very much for watching. Stay safe out there. More content to come. We will see you next time. D-Rock out. Adios.